The story opens with an old woman knitting, until she hears something upstairs running around. She pulls out an antique phone book to call an exterminator. We see from the notes on the wall that it looks like she has Alzheimer's. Frank the exterminator comes by, but the Bug brothers are parked right outside. Frank warns the confused Helga about the green snot coming out of her vents. He hears the noise again and goes in to check it out. He finds a blood trail in the back bedroom and a Bug Brothers hard hat lying lifeless and starts screaming. Something drags him back into the room and closes the door. Old Helga forgets all this and goes back to her knitting. She hears banging noises and calls an exterminator. 4 days earlier, we see a meteor crash down into Helga's apartment building and a spider hatches out of it. A kid, Charlotte, breaks in through the ventilation shaft to steal her grandma Gunter's prized dolls. She finds the spider and puts it in a matchbox, and Gunter, a mean-looking old woman, comes in and she crawls through the ducts. Gunter, who is also in charge of their building's management, believes Charlotte broke the glass of her window. So she confronts Ethan about it. Ethan, who's in a relationship with Charlotte's single mother, Heather, denies Gunter's claims. Later, Ethan asks Charlotte whether she went into Gunter's storeroom, but she says she didn't. Ethan goes back to his work as a graphic novelist. Charlotte comes in to offer a suggestion for one of his characters, who reminds her of her estranged father. Ethan appreciates Charlotte's suggestion, but doesn't use it once she leaves his room. Meanwhile, Charlotte doesn't tell him or her mother about the spider, but remains curious about it. She traps a cockroach and offers it to the spider to eat. The spider engulfs it, and Charlotte admires its skill. She names it Sting. As the part-time caretaker of the building, Ethan looks around for any maintenance issues. He helps Maria with a plumbing issue at her apartment. Heather takes care of her old mother, Helga, who suffers from memory loss issues. While she puts Helga to sleep, Ethan takes care of their baby. Later that night, Ethan walks into Charlotte's room in her absence. He looks at the jar that she uses to keep the spider, but doesn't notice it. Then, he sees her sketch of a giant spider. Once she returns to the room, he asks if he can use that idea for his novel. Ethan worries that Charlotte may never accept him as her father. Heather makes him see how much Charlotte values him. Meanwhile, the spider in Charlotte's room gets surprisingly bigger, so it sneaks out of the jar, goes through the vent, and attacks the parrot in Helga's room, while Charlotte is unaware of the spider's doing. So Ethan calls exterminator Frank to look for the cause and help to not let something similar happen again. Back in her room, Charlotte conducts multiple experiments to analyze the spider's behavior. She feeds it cockroaches and realizes that it repeats the sound it hears. Also, she notices mothballs can harm it. Frank looks around the apartment complex for signs of any damage. He sprays the whole building as per his job requirements, but Gunter pays him only half the amount. Ethan cannot help Frank either to get his deserved pay. However, despite Frank's work, the building witnesses more tragic incidents. Maria is doing things in her apartment. She picks up a photograph hanging on the wall, and we see there's a spider on it. It jumps at her, and she loses track of it, but she's eventually bitten and killed by the spider. Meanwhile, Charlotte decides to meet one of their neighbors, Eric, who is a biologist. She talks to him about the spider and says that it can talk, almost like how a talking parrot repeats what it hears. Eric explains that don't have any vocal cords, which makes it impossible for them to talk. Eric recognizes Charlotte's spider to be one of the rare species, so he decides to investigate the case for her with an experiment. He says he'll bring it back to her afterward. She agrees. Back at her apartment, Ethan and Heather talk about their work plans. Suddenly, they hear a movement in the air vent. Ethan tries to check for any issues. Suddenly, Maria's dog appears there and scares him. He walks to her apartment to return it. Inside, he finds Maria's dead body near the bathtub. During an investigation by the police, Eric contacts Ethan and he goes over to his apartment. Eric tells him about Charlotte keeping a dangerous and venomous arachnid in their apartment. Ethan doesn't take it too seriously until he sees Sting. Eric warns Ethan that the creature could be a killer and that they must hand it over to the Department of Health and Safety. Charlotte is heartbroken when she was told that her pet was a life hazard and it was surrendered. In the heat of the moment, Ethan blurts out the truth about her biological father. He doesn't live in Thailand, as he told her, but in the same town that they do. This argument creates a bigger rift between Ethan and Charlotte. But Eric did not hand the creature to the Department of Health and Safety. Instead, he kept it with him and created an environment that would be perfect for its growth and feeds it bigger things from his specimens. It's soon big enough to break out of the glass aquarium. That night, Gunter hears her cat in the hallway, but when she drunkenly crawls into the vent, the spider gets her. Due to the recent turn of events, Ethan accidentally breaks his television. So, he and Heather get into a heated argument. Suddenly, the spider jumps down and attacks both Heather and Ethan. Charlotte's got earphones on and misses all of it. Her puppy barks at her trying to alert her, but she is still confused, and the spider slowly drags them away through the vent. As the puppy continues barking, she takes off her headphones, having strange feelings and looking for her parents. Her puppy goes through the vent. When she calls out its name, she hears the repetition from Sting. When it approaches her, she gets scared and closes the vent. However, when it steals her baby brother, she quickly makes a solution of mothballs in water bottles and loads pesticide into a squirt gun. Inside the vent, she notices a dead animal caught in the web. Gunter and Ethan wake up webbed and unable to speak. Charlotte enters Eric's apartment and notices he is caught in a spider web. She checks on Helga, who is fine. Helga saw the spider, but it ran away from her because she smells like mothballs. She makes more mothballs water and also sprinkles it all over her body. Charlotte finds Ethan next, and she works to release him from the webbing using the mothball water to free him from the venomous web. Frank shows up outside, and we're back to the opening scene. Meanwhile, as Ethan and Charlotte try to leave the vent, they end up falling into the basement of the building and cornered by the spider. But Ethan runs it off with the mothball water. Frank comes rolling in through the vent and joins them. The situation gets all the more tense when they realize that they are trapped in the basement. Ethan does not have the keys to the door on him, and Frank the Exterminator added to the chaos. The Exterminator was also attacked by Sting. In an attempt to protect himself, he ends up causing more harm. The water pipe gets busted thanks to his staple gun, and the effect of the mothball they have on them starts to wash away. Sting eventually kills Frank, and Charlotte and Ethan decide to hide in the garbage compactor. To their surprise, they find Heather and Liam there. They use the remaining mothball water to free them, and the family is finally reunited. Sting approaches them, and Ethan plans to trap Sting in the garbage compactor and squish the monster to death. But unfortunately, even after pressing the button multiple times, the weight does not fall as expected. Ethan risks his life and reconnects the plug, and in the process gets electrocuted. The button finally works, and when Charlotte presses it, the weight crashes down on the monstrous creature. While the family is saved, Ethan stops responding, and Charlotte prays with all her heart for Ethan to be alive. In the count to 3, Ethan magically resuscitates. Charlotte finally tells Ethan that she loves him, so it's all going to be okay from now on. You think the problem is over? I don't think so. The scene shifts to a dark corner where we see lots of spider eggs as they hatch, implying more danger to come. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please follow or subscribe, and don't forget to like, share, and comment. Your support means everything and helps me create more great content.